It was one of those mornings that shouldn't feel heavy, cloudless sky, air just cool enough to suggest fall was around the corner. The kind of day I would have once appreciated without overthinking. But even before I opened the door, I had this strange feeling, like a weight sitting quietly on my chest. I grabbed my travel mug and keys from the kitchen counter, slipped my shoes on by the front door, and swung it open like I had every morning for years. And there it was, right on the welcome mat, standing out like a sore thumb against the neutral brown fiber. A bright, ocean blue sports water bottle. Thick and cylindrical, expensive looking. The kind athletes carry like a badge of honor. It had a glossy sticker peeling off the side that read, Derek. Above it, etched into the plastic, was the logo of Echelon Performance, one of those elite fitness clubs in Miami where people don't just work out. They network, show off, play status games. I stared at it for a second, confused. I don't own a bottle like that. Neither does Jade, my wife. And if she ever went to a gym, it was the neighborhood one with squeaky ellipticals and a leaky water fountain. Echelon wasn't even on her radar. The name on the bottle, Derek. The only Derek I could immediately think of was her boss. I'd met him once. Tan, charismatic, talked like he was always pitching something. Jade said he was intense but brilliant. The kind of guy who somehow made everyone around him feel both inspired and inadequate at the same time. He drove a black Porsche and wore perfectly tailored dress shirts with the sleeves always rolled halfway. A natural leader, she called him. I hadn't liked him. Too slick. I picked up the bottle. It wasn't just dropped, it was placed. Right in the center of the mat, standing upright like whoever left it there wasn't in a rush. Like it had been forgotten after a night spent close by. Just then, Jade walked up behind me, already dressed in her usual business casual uniform. She had that polished, efficient look, white blouse, neat hair, nude heels. Coffee in one hand, phone in the other. No sign of the woman who, hours ago, had come home late talking about office drama and pulling an all-nighter with the team. I turned to her, bottle in hand, eyebrows raised. Did someone leave this? Her eyes flicked down to it for half a second. Just half a second. And then she smiled, too quickly, and reached for it like it was barely worth noticing. Oh, yeah. That must have rolled out of my car or something. One of the interns probably left it there. Interns drink from bottles with their names on them? I asked. Came out light, joking almost. But inside, something had already started to twist. She didn't skip a beat. You know how Gen Z is. They label everything. Hydration culture or whatever. Then she chuckled, slipped it into her bag, and moved toward the car like that was the end of it. No further explanation offered. No space for follow-up questions. And here's the thing that really stuck with me. She never asked why I was holding it. Never asked where I found it. Never wondered if someone had come by, or if I thought something was off. She just absorbed it, handled it, controlled the moment. It was smooth, too smooth. I stood there for a second, watching her unlock the car with one hand and tap away at her phone with the other. She looked like herself, same walk, same rhythm. But the longer I watched, the more I realized something had shifted. The night before, she texted me around 8:45 saying she was stuck at work, helping Derek prep for a last-minute pitch to a health tech startup. She hadn't come home until after midnight, hair up in a messy bun, makeup wiped off, smelling faintly of wine and some citrusy cologne I didn't recognize. I didn't question it. I'd been half asleep on the couch, told her she looked exhausted, and she gave me this grateful half-smile like I was the world's most supportive husband for not making a big deal about it. Now, looking back at that moment with the bottle in my hand, something about that night replayed differently. The way she'd taken off her shoes silently, careful not to wake me. The way she went straight to the shower before even saying hello. The way her bag had looked a little fuller than usual. Back then, I told myself I was imagining things. Now, I wasn't so sure. As she pulled out of the driveway, I stood at the porch a little longer, the weight in my chest growing heavier. It wasn't just the bottle, it was the way she dismissed it. Like it wasn't a red flag, but a trivial, forgettable detail. She didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. She treated it like I was the one being dramatic for noticing something out of place. That's what got me. I've always believed that the truth usually shows up in the pauses. The flinches, the too long silences, the scrambled stories. But Jade? She didn't leave room for any of that. She acted like a professional magician. Distracting, shifting, smoothing the surface just enough to keep my eyes where she wanted them. Except that day something in me stopped playing along. The rest of the morning passed in this weird fog. I went through my usual motions, made my commute, nodded through meetings, even laughed at a coworker's lame joke about the vending machine eating his dollar. But my mind kept circling back to that water bottle. Who brings a bottle with their name on it to someone else's house? Who forgets it so casually? And why would it end up on our front porch unless that person had been inside, or at the very least stayed close enough to drop it while leaving? I kept thinking about Jade's reaction. Not panicked, not surprised, but too casual. As if she already had a mental drawer full of explanations ready to pull out at a moment's notice. That was the first time in our marriage where I felt like I wasn't just being reassured, I was being managed. And once that thought clicked, I couldn't unsee it. I wish I could say I confronted her right away, that I walked back in the house, tossed the bottle on the table, and demanded answers. But I didn't. I shoved the feeling down, told myself I was overthinking, that I'd been watching too many internet confessionals and Reddit dramas. I told myself our marriage was strong, that Jade had no reason to lie. But the thing about instinct, it doesn't go away just because you don't want to believe it. And that water bottle, that stupid, plastic, Miami Gym branded water bottle, became the first piece of evidence I couldn't ignore. The crack that let the rest of the truth start leaking through. The thing about hindsight is it doesn't whisper, it screams. Once you start listening, it won't shut up. On the surface, that morning with the water bottle should have been just a weird blip in an otherwise normal routine. But instead, it cracked something loose in me. And once that crack opened, memory after memory poured through it like floodwater. Things I had seen, noticed, dismissed. Tiny offbeat rhythms in the music of our life that I chalked up to stress, to change, to work, to anything but what they really were. I remember driving to work that day, gripping the wheel tighter than usual, staring straight ahead but barely seeing the road. Traffic lights turned green and red like clockwork, but all I could focus on was this reel of half-buried moments I hadn't wanted to piece together. It started with the gym. A few months ago, Jade suddenly got really into working out. Not like her usual half-hearted yoga class once a week to balance the wine. No, this was intense. She signed up for a premium membership at a boutique gym across town. The same place Derek went incidentally. She started wearing form-fitting activewear, the expensive kind with thumb holes and contour seams. She'd leave the house at 6 a.m., barely saying a word, claiming she had to get her body back on track because work was so stressful. The weird part wasn't the workout itself. I admired her for trying to be healthier. It was how secretive it all became. Before, she used to roll her eyes at gym culture, said it felt fake. Now she was suddenly glued to her fitness tracker, constantly drinking green shakes, and always exhausted in this strange, wired way. When I asked how the workouts were going, she always answered vaguely. Tiring? Sweaty? Good, I guess. Then she'd change the subject. Every time. Like she didn't want to get too specific. Then there was her phone. God, her phone. There was a time when Jade would toss it face up on the kitchen island, notifications buzzing every few minutes, Instagram, texts, junk emails. But somewhere along the way that changed. It was subtle at first. She started keeping it in her hand, even around the house. Then it became a fixture, always with her, screen always black, face down if she left it on the table. Silent mode became permanent. I tried not to read into it. Everyone's glued to their phones these days. But when you're married, you know the difference between normal attachment and someone guarding a lifeline. And Jade guarded hers like it held state secrets. One night, I remember hearing it buzz on the bathroom counter while she was in the shower. It lit up briefly, and I caught a glimpse of a name. Just one word, D. Not even a full name, just D. The message preview said, "Still thinking about that moment earlier." I remember standing there like a statue, heart pounding, unable to decide whether to pick it up or walk away. In the end, I did nothing. She came out, towel around her body, eyes flicking toward the phone like she was tracking it from across the room. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said like an idiot, just spaced out. She smiled, walked over, and kissed me on the cheek like everything was normal. But I remember how quickly her hand reached for that phone, tucking it into her robe pocket before I could even look at the screen again. And then there were the trips. Work trips suddenly, constantly. It used to be once every few months for a conference or a pitch. Lately, every week. Chicago, Atlanta. One time she claimed she had to fly out to Phoenix for a client brainstorm. She never liked traveling before. She said it drained her. Now she came back with hotel receipts, expensive meals charged to her card, and vague stories about late-night meetings and early flights. But the strangest part? She never came back smelling like hotel shampoo. She came back smelling like men's cologne. Not the cheap kind either, the kind that lingers on your clothes, clings to your skin. Not once. Not twice. Every time. I asked about it once, casually, "New perfume?" She laughed and said, "Oh, probably just rubbed off from a seat on the plane." It was flimsy, and I knew it, but I let it slide, because I wanted to believe it. Another thing that stood out, her sudden obsession with privacy. She started closing doors. Not slamming them, just clicking them shut. Her laptop, once left open in the kitchen, became password protected, always turned off when I walked in. One night, I passed by her office and caught her jumping a little, like she wasn't expecting me. "What are you working on?" I asked. "Client stuff," she said too fast. "Just contracts and copy. Boring." "Need help?" She smiled. "You'd hate it." Maybe I would've. But the way she minimized it, the way she deflected every time I got too close, felt rehearsed. And then there was the silence. Not just quiet. Silence. Emotional silence. Like we were two people in the same house but on different time zones. She started going to bed earlier, claiming she was tired. She stopped asking about my day. Meals became short, rushed, distracted. She'd look at her phone under the table, smile faintly, and then look up at me like nothing had happened. There were nights when I'd sit next to her on the couch and feel like I was invisible. Not because she was mad, but because her attention was somewhere else. With someone else. And still, I talked myself out of it. I told myself, this is just what happens in long marriages. That we were hitting a rough patch. That maybe she was just trying to find herself again. I blamed work, burnout, even myself. But when I look back, all those moments, the phone, the perfume, the gym, the silence, they weren't random. They were strategic. She was creating distance, training me to accept her absence, shifting her patterns slowly so that when the truth finally hit, she could say, "You saw this coming, but I hadn't. Not really. I was just a little too trusting, a little too willing to give the benefit of the doubt. Because I loved her. Because I still believed in the version of her that came home smiling after a long day, who kissed me goodnight and held my hand under restaurant tables. The hardest part about being betrayed isn't the act itself. It's realizing you ignored every sign because you didn't want to believe the person you loved was capable of it. By the time I pulled into the parking lot at work that morning, I couldn't move. I sat in the car, hands gripping the wheel, the air conditioning humming softly. My stomach was in knots. Not from rage, not even grief, but from a growing certainty I couldn't ignore anymore. I've been lied to, not once, not by accident, but consistently, carefully. This wasn't something unraveling. It was something designed. And if I was being honest with myself, I knew exactly who Derek was. It's strange how the mind clings to hope, even when the evidence is stacking up right in front of your face. You keep telling yourself you're overreacting, that your gut is just being dramatic, that the person you married couldn't possibly be that person. I told myself all those things, right up until the moment Jade gave me no room for doubt. It was a Thursday night when I got the invite. Jade's boss, Derek, was hosting a company event, one of those curated networking mixers that's half rooftop cocktails and half ego fest. She told me about it casually, like she almost forgot to mention it. "Oh, Derek's having this thing at the new high-rise downtown. You know, that building with the infinity pool and the insane view? Yeah, his firm just opened a new floor up there. He's calling it a celebration of vision, whatever that means. I asked if I should come, just to support her, nothing big. She hesitated for half a beat. You sure? I mean, it's mostly clients and investors. Might be boring. I told her I didn't mind. A drink with a view sounds nice. She smiled, a tight, practiced one. Okay, yeah. Come by if you want. I'll text you the details. She didn't. I had to remind her the next day. That alone should have been enough to tell me she didn't want me there. But I showed up anyway. I didn't walk in angry. I wasn't looking for a fight or some dramatic scene. I honestly believed maybe I'd see her there and feel reassured. That I'd catch her mid-convo, smile at her from across the room, and realize I'd been wrong this whole time. I wanted to be wrong. The rooftop was just as ridiculous as she said. Glass panels, floor-to-ceiling skyline views, string lights twinkling like stars. It smelled like designer cologne, champagne, and money. And there she was. Jade stood near the edge of the balcony, framed by the city lights, laughing, relaxed. Her hand rested casually on Derek's arm, that Derek. From the water bottle, from the gym, from the emails I never saw but now knew existed. She looked up at him like he was the only person in the world. I stopped walking. I hadn't made it more than 10 feet past the elevator when I froze, stuck in this weird moment where time felt both too fast and completely still. I don't even think she saw me at first. Someone brushed past me with a flute of champagne, and that snapped me out of it. I took a few more steps, just enough to be noticed. I made eye contact with one of the assistants I'd seen before at one of Jade's earlier events. She looked at me, blinked hard, then looked away quickly, like she'd been caught watching a car crash. That's when Jade saw me. Her face didn't fall. It didn't change much at all. She stepped away from Derek slightly, not enough to be obvious. Then she walked over to me with a smile that looked polite but not personal. Hey, she said, almost like I was an unexpected guest at someone else's wedding. Didn't think you'd make it. I said I would, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced behind her. Derek was still standing there, talking to someone else now, but watching us out of the corner of his eye. I was just chatting with a few folks, she said lightly, introducing them to Derek. He's been amazing about helping me level up at the firm. Yeah, I said. I've heard. She looked down at her drink. Well, hey, I'm glad you stopped by. Seriously. But I'm kind of running around right now. Just wanted to say hi. That's when she said it. The thing that sealed it. To a colleague walking by, she gestured toward me and said, "Oh, this is just a friend who dropped in to say hi. Just a friend. Not my husband. Not even my partner. Just a friend." Like I was someone who happened to show up and didn't really matter in this version of her world. I didn't say anything back. I just nodded and stepped away, the edges of the room suddenly tilting around me. People were smiling, laughing, toasting, taking selfies in front of the skyline like everything was golden and sparkling and flawless. Meanwhile, my whole chest felt like it had imploded. I left without saying another word. The elevator ride down was too slow. The music too soft, too cheery. The hallway too clean. I felt like I was sleepwalking. When I reached the ground floor, I didn't go to the car. I just kept walking. There was a glass column in the middle of the lobby, some artsy architectural feature that reflected the ceiling lights. As I passed it, something made me turn back. And there, in the mirror-like surface, I saw her. Upstairs, still visible through the glass, standing just outside the balcony door. Alone now. She wasn't laughing anymore. She had a tissue in one hand, smudging away black streaks under her eyes. Her mouth was pinched tight, shoulders stiff, breathing shallow, trying to pull it back together. She didn't know anyone was watching. And that's when I realized. Her mask had slipped 5 minutes too late. Up there, in front of everyone. She played her part perfectly, cool, composed, successful, admired. But the second she thought I was gone, she cracked. Not for long. Just long enough for me to see it. Her boss walked by. Not Derek, the other one, the guy with the thick glasses who always forgot my name. He paused, looked confused, and asked something I couldn't hear. She nodded, wiped her eyes again, said something short. He walked off, eyebrows furrowed, and she just stood there, frozen in a version of her own story that no longer made sense. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I walked back to my car, slid into the driver's seat, and just sat there for a while, hands on the wheel. No radio, no tears, just this hollow, echoing silence. Like something inside me had finally died. Not loudly, but quietly, without ceremony. It's a weird thing when the truth finally shows up and confirms what you already knew. You think you'll explode, yell, rage, demand answers. But I didn't, because the moment I saw her hand on his arm, the moment she introduced me like I was nobody, I understood something important. She was already gone. Not physically, not yet, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, gone. And the worst part? She'd probably been gone for a while. When I got home that night, I half expected the place to be dark and empty, that she'd still be at the party or maybe even already at his place, wherever that was. Instead, I walked through the front door and felt like I'd stepped onto a soundstage. Everything was perfect, too perfect. There were twinkle lights strung across the kitchen window, ones she hadn't used since our second anniversary. The candle on the counter was burning. Her favorite one, the one that smells like cedarwood and something faintly floral. The cushions on the couch were fluffed just right. A tray of cookies, still warm, sat on the stovetop. Chocolate chip, my favorite. The music playing softly in the background? A playlist she made for me years ago, one I thought she'd long forgotten about. Felt like I'd walked into a memory, or worse, a reenactment of a memory. She was standing in the dining room, rearranging silverware like we were about to have company. She looked up when I walked in and smiled. Not wide, not nervous, just enough to register polite warmth. "Hey," she said, as if I hadn't just seen her standing beside another man, her hand on his arm. "You disappeared." "I left," I said simply. "I noticed," she replied, as if I'd ducked out early from a dinner party, not a marriage. There was a beat of silence. "I thought maybe we could talk," she said. "I picked up those cookies you like from the bakery near the office." I nodded but didn't move. I felt like a stranger in my own doorway. Everything was arranged just right, just clean enough, just cozy enough to feel fake. Like someone had looked at photos of our life and tried to recreate it from memory. Like a set designer building a version of home that looked real under the lights, but if you tapped on the walls, they'd echo. She kept moving around the room, placing napkins, checking the oven, brushing crumbs off the counter. All in this strangely smooth rhythm, like she was acting out a scene in a play. Like if she hit every mark and said her lines calmly, I'd forget what I saw. Like she could pull me back into the script where we still worked. But I wasn't following the script anymore. She poured 2 glasses of wine. One for her, one for me. Set them down gently on the table, candlelight flickering in the stemware like we were on some awkward date. I still hadn't taken off my jacket. "You okay?" she asked. "Are you?" She hesitated for just a second, barely enough to register, then nodded. "It's been a long day. That's one way to put it." She looked down, fiddled with the edge of her wine glass. "I'm sorry if I embarrassed you at the event." There it was. Not, "I'm sorry for what you saw." Not, "I'm sorry I introduced my husband like a stranger." No, "I'm sorry if you felt uncomfortable." As if my pain was a reaction, not a result. I didn't answer, just watched her move through the house, still playing the role. The gestures were familiar, but there was no weight behind them. Like watching someone impersonate someone I used to know. She pulled a pan of something from the oven, lasagna, the kind we used to make together on Sundays. The smell filled the kitchen, warm and nostalgic, but it made my stomach turn. "You didn't have to cook?" I said flatly. "I wanted to." She said it too quickly. "I thought maybe we could have dinner and reset. Just us." Reset. Like this was a glitch, a technical error we could restart from. I finally walked in, dropped my keys on the counter, and stared at her. "Why are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "This?" I gestured to the whole room. The lights, the music, the cookies, the wine, the perfectly folded napkins, the reset. What is this supposed to be? She opened her mouth, but no words came. Just this faint tremble around her lips, like she was choosing between truth and performance. This isn't how people fix things, I said. It's how people pretend they don't need to. She looked down again. I thought maybe if we could just talk, get back to something familiar. Familiar? I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. You spent the whole night pretending I didn't exist. Then I come home and find you setting the stage for a fake domestic evening like nothing happened. I'm trying, she said quietly. To what? Rewrite it? Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. Not yet. She just stood there, hands gripping the back of a chair, trying to stay steady. I watched her, and for a moment, I felt this strange disconnect. Like I was floating just a few feet above my life, watching someone else's movie play out. I looked around the room, the flickering candles, the perfect plating, the wine, the lasagna, and all I could think was, none of this is real. It's all set dressing. I used to love this house. Not for its design or square footage, it wasn't fancy, but because it felt like us. Our story was in the scratches on the table where she dropped her keys. The dent in the wall from that time I moved the couch alone. The burned spot on the counter from a wine night gone wrong. It was messy, lived in, real. Now, it was curated, smoothed over, erased. Even she didn't look like Jade anymore. Not the one I knew. She looked like a version of herself trying to perform sincerity. She had on one of those soft sweaters I used to compliment. Her makeup was lighter, like she was trying to appear raw and honest. But her movements were still careful, her voice still measured, and her eyes still not meeting mine for long. This isn't going to work, I said finally. She looked up. What isn't? This, I said again. You, me, this house. It's all an illusion right now. You're being dramatic, she whispered. No, I said. I'm being honest. That was the difference between us. I wasn't pretending anymore. I wasn't hoping for magic. I wasn't layering over the cracks. I was standing in them. She sat down slowly, folded her hands on the table. Her shoulders slumped a little. Maybe she finally understood. Or maybe she just realized the scene wasn't playing the way she rehearsed. What do you want me to say? She asked, barely audible. I don't want a speech, I said. I just want the truth. She didn't respond. The silence between us was louder than any screaming match we could have had. It wasn't tension, it was absence. The kind that doesn't fill space but empties it. After a few minutes, I walked upstairs without touching the food, the wine, or the woman sitting at the table. In our bedroom, everything was tucked and folded and vacuumed like we were expecting a magazine shoot. The sheets were turned down. A robe hung on the door. There was a new candle lit on the dresser. Another soft scent she knew I liked, but it didn't feel comforting. Felt like a set, like I was walking through a replica of a life I no longer lived. And the scariest part? She still thought I'd be convinced by the illusion. I wasn't even looking for anything when I found it. That's what messed me up the most. There was no grand act of suspicion, no dramatic search while she was away. I wasn't playing detective. I wasn't rifling through drawers or trying to catch her red-handed. I was just sorting through a stack of mail on the kitchen counter. Bills, flyers, the usual, trying to get back to something that felt normal. Mixed in with the pile was a bright orange folder, the kind she used for work with little sticky notes poking out the sides. I figured she left it there by mistake, so I picked it up to move it to her office. As I turned the folder in my hands, a thin, silver tablet slid out from the middle and landed softly on the counter. Her old tablet, the one she used to use before she upgraded. I hadn't seen it in years. I didn't even know it still worked. It lit up when I tapped the button. No password. Just opened like it had been waiting. I should have put it back down. Should have left it alone. But I didn't. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe old Pinterest boards, maybe work notes, maybe photos of us from when we still smiled like we meant it. What I found instead didn't feel like a mistake. Felt like a blueprint. There was a folder buried 4 layers deep under her work stuff. Named something neutral, Project Mercury. At first glance, it looked like a presentation, clean slides, bullet points, timelines. But the first line of the document made my stomach turn. Phase 1, emotional disconnection, reduce availability, increase personal time. It wasn't a business plan. It was a step-by-step guide on how to leave me. There were dates, checklists, psychological notes. It read like something between a war strategy and a breakup manual. Phase 2, financial separation, set up private checking. Transfer recurring subscriptions. Remove shared passwords. Phase 3, belongings, gradually remove personal items. Start with least noticeable, yoga mat, favorite books, perfumes not used often. Avoid visible gaps. Phase 4, relational positioning. Increase references to Derek, Max, 2x per week. Position him as colleague only. Avoid overusing name to prevent suspicion. Couldn't breathe. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't a sudden lapse in judgment. This wasn't her falling into someone's arms during a weak moment. This was planned, designed, researched. There was a list titled Exit Language, filled with sample phrases she'd rehearsed for when the time came. We've grown apart. This isn't about someone else. I've changed and I need to find myself. You've done nothing wrong. This is my journey. She had even written the script. I kept scrolling, my fingers shaking. There were logs, journal entries of sorts, dated months back. One entry said, "He still doesn't suspect anything, but I feel guilty when he's kind to me. I need to stick to the plan. Derek says I'm getting stronger." Another, "The dinner last night felt fake. I couldn't even look at him without feeling like a liar. I need more distance, less touching, less eye contact." It wasn't just about being with Derek. It was about leaving me, with precision, with care, with deniability. She wasn't trying to hurt me violently. She was trying to vanish quietly, to slip out of our life like it was a job she was transitioning out of. Clean break, low drama, a soft landing for her reputation. There was a final document in the folder. Contingency planning, and under that, if confronted prematurely, deny with empathy. Reaffirm confusion about personal growth. Avoid blame. Stay calm. Be the reasonable one. If digital content is found, claim journaling therapy. The tablet screen blurred. I don't know if it was my eyes or my hands shaking. I felt cold all over. Not the kind of cold that comes from shock. The kind that comes from standing too close to something that was never meant to be seen. This wasn't about cheating anymore. Cheating implies messiness, chaos, emotion. This was logistics, strategy, project-managed betrayal. I sat down on the edge of the couch and just stared into space. The TV was still on from earlier. Some old sitcom rerun playing in the background. A laugh track echoed across the living room, clashing horribly with the sound of my breathing. She planned her exit like a corporate rebrand. I thought back to the gym membership, the schedule changes, the new wardrobe, the shift in tone, the deleted texts, the perfectly arranged dinner nights, the rooftop scene, her reintroduction of me as a friend. It all made sense now. She hadn't drifted. She had prepared. Every little change I thought was just a mood swing or a phase or the natural evolution of a marriage. Every single one was a controlled part of a larger timeline. A slow unspooling of our life together that I wasn't supposed to notice until she was already gone. And that's what hit me hardest. She wasn't just trying to be with someone else. She was trying to make sure I'd let her go without a fight. And I might have played right into her script, nodding along when she eventually said, "We just want different things now." Or, "This isn't working anymore." I would have blamed myself. I probably was blaming myself even now. I looked around the house, at the lights she'd hung to make the kitchen feel warm, the flickering candles still burning on the counter, the leftovers she had packed in containers, labeled with sticky notes like she still cared. All part of the act. Not to fool everyone. Just me. I sat there for a long time. I don't know how long. The candle had burned halfway down by the time I moved again. I stood up, walked back to the kitchen, and looked at the tablet one last time. Then I powered it down. Not because I was done looking, but because I had seen enough. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't confused. I was clear. This wasn't a crisis. It was a campaign. And the person I thought I loved? She wasn't coming back. Because she never intended to. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I started documenting everything, timelines, messages, photos, her exit plan. Quietly. Precisely. Then I shared the truth with the people who still believed in her, her sister, her mentor, her childhood friend. No drama. Just facts. I didn't offer commentary. I let her actions speak for themselves. I wasn't trying to destroy her. I was trying to remove her ability to rewrite the story later, to claim this was mutual or inevitable. I erased the narrative she'd been building. That was my move. Silent. Strategic. Clean. The divorce was quiet. She said all the right things: personal growth, emotional distance, incompatible goals. I said nothing. There was no point. Once the papers were signed, I left the city and moved to Sedona. Rented a small place near the trails. Spent my evenings walking under desert skies. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting to be left. I'd already left. Not out of pain, but peace. She lost control of the ending. And I found my way back to myself.